Hey guys, so welcome to day 2 of Ecology. Again, hope everybody is doing really well. Let's go ahead and get started. So, day 2, make sure you have out your day 2 worksheet as I will have mine out right now. All right, so day 2's aim is how is energy transferred in an ecosystem? All right, so the do now says list as many abiotic factors as you can in this classroom. Obviously, we're not in a classroom, so we're gonna maybe do it like, in your home or somebody else's home or something. So abiotic factors that we interact with in our homes, right? Air, water, um, space, especially during quarantine time, right? Remember, abiotic means non, wow, non-living, all right? And then biotic means living. Some living organisms, humans, obviously bacteria, a little COVID, but viruses, things like that kind of stuff, all right? Although COVID technically wouldn't be considered a biotic factor because it's not made of cells, and all organisms on Earth, in order to be considered living, are made of cells. That's unit 2, cell theory, right? Okay, so let's move on. I'm gonna clear the board and we'll cycle through. So, clear. All right, so ecology, the study of organisms and their relationships with their environment and other organisms in it. These are studied at different levels, okay? So make sure that you're filling in your worksheet. All right. And next to ecology in bold, it says interdependence. So you guys should have remembered from day 1 that interdependence means that organisms depend on each other for survival within a given ecosystem. All right. And again, ecology is the study of organisms and their relationships with their environment and the other organisms in it. These are studied at different levels. All right. In the small circle here, in the red circle, we have an organism. Remember, this is levels of organization. All right. We have an organism. That's one individual organism. All right. Right above an organism, we have a population. Now, a population is the amount of organisms in a given ecosystem at at a given time, right? So when we say like the population of New York, the way that we count that is through like the census, right? We're able to know every 10 years what the population of New York looks like, but we're only talking about humans. We're not talking about grass, we're not talking about trees, we're not talking about deer. We're talking about the human population. So it only applies to one species, all right? And then an organism is an individual organism within that population. That's why you see the red circle within the purple circle. Purple circle, purple circle. All right. Then the black circle, we have a community. All right. And a community are all of the biotic factors within an ecosystem, right? So the biotic factors within the New York City community, We have trees, we have grass, we have humans, we have squirrels, we have, um, you know, dogs, cats, all sorts of things, right? These are all biotic factors. That's what makes up a community, all the biotic factors that are interacting with each other. And then right above community, right, all of these are located within an ecosystem. And we know that an ecosystem are all of the biotic and the abiotic factors that are all interacting with each other at a given time, occupying a given space. All right. And then right above the ecosystem is every factor on Earth, which is the biosphere. Right? Bio means life. Sphere obviously means a circular object. So we're talking about all of life, everything that gives rise to life and contributes to life within Earth. So organism is the smallest, biosphere is the largest. Okay. Um, let's go ahead and clear this. So believe it or not, we spoke about um, we spoke about levels of organization since unit 2. And I just kind of want to show you like how far we've gotten with that. So the smallest particles, not the smallest particles that we know, but the smallest ones that we really have a chance of like studying like are atoms. ATOM. A group of atoms that are bonded together make up molecules. Preparing you guys for chemistry, right? Um, a group of molecules that are coming together. They're going to make up proteins, fats, lipids, oils, waxes, those type of things. All of those that come together, those components, are going to make up an organelle. A group of organelles make up a cell. A group of cells make up a tissue or tissues. I'm going to continue down here. A group of tissues make up an organ. A group of organs make up an organ system. A group of organ systems make up an organism. Oh, let me write it in a different color. I'm going to write in the small circle, organism. A group of organisms, you guys should know it by now, makes up a population. A group of populations that are interacting with each other, the biotic factors, make up a community. And a lot of communities that are interacting with each other make up an ecosystem. And then all the ecosystems on Earth that are interacting with each other, they all make up the biosphere. Isn't that pretty cool? Levels of organization? That's pretty cool. So if you want to know, just like those subway posts, when you look at a map and it says you are here, you are here, right? You guys are right in the middle. You're not too small, but you're also not too big. All right, let's move on. Isn't science so much fun? I'm having a blast. All right, so ecological levels. So an organism, any single living thing, which we already spoke about, right? So an organism is any single living creature. This is one organism, whatever this is, a meerkat, whatever it is. Population, all of the organisms in a given species in one area. So you notice that they're all a part of the same species, but there's more than one of them. This is a population. So this is organism. Let me see if I can. Population. All right. Community, all of the biotic factors in a given area, right? So here we see a snake on the ground. We see these same animals that are here. And then we also see grass and we see trees in the background. This is a community. All right. And then the bottom right picture makes up an ecosystem, right? Which are all of the abiotic and biotic factors in a given area, right? So we see fish in there, we see like some plant material in there, but we also see some shells in there. We also see water in there. It's probably getting sunlight if there's plant matter there because plants need that. And in the biosphere are all of these things that are going to interact with each other. All right. All right. Moving on. Whoops. Why did I do that? Oh, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I could do that. So food chains. So food chains show the relationships between each organism and what eats it and what excuse me and what it eats and what eats it, if anything does eat it. In a food chain, there are also different trophic levels. When we say trophic, we're talking about energy, right? So there's different energy levels that are there. So remember, I said in day one, these arrows, oops, these arrows represent the flow of energy or energy flow. Same thing. The grass is going to take energy from the sun in order to make and through the process of photosynthesis in order to make sugars for itself. The deer is then going to come and eat the grass. The lion is then going to eat the deer. And that'll just continue. All right. All right. Food chain. So the first organism that must always be present in a food chain is a primary producer. Let's say our primary producer, these are plants, right? We have a tree. That's the primary producer here. Producers are organisms that can make their own food using the energy from the sun, also called autotrophs. Okay, right? So when we say make their own food, we're talking about the process of photosynthesis. Okay. Consumers are organisms that eat other organisms to get the energy for growth and development, also called heterotrophs. All right. So if we have a heterotroph, let's say we have a snake Okay, I don't know what kind of snake it is, but they eat other organisms to get the energy for growth and development, and they're also known as heterotrophs. Label the food chain with the correct trophic levels. So I'm going to clear this, go to the next slide. It might be slightly different on yours than it is on mine, but essentially it's the same. I said label the food chain with the correct trophic levels. So this trophic level here, whoops, this trophic level here is at the very bottom. Obviously up here is at the top, but if you see the arrows and where they're pointing, you'll definitely see where the flow of energy is, right? And so we have grass, and we know that grass is an autotroph. That means that that trophic level is a producer. They produce their own food, producers. Grass is going to pass this energy to the grasshopper or the cricket. I don't know which one it is, right? And if they primarily feed on, or if they exclusively feed on just plant material, that means that they have to be herbivores. And herbivores are primary consumers. So primary consumers is the trophic level. This is what they feed on, right? This is their diet. Now, the grasshopper is going to pass its energy on to, if it's unlucky enough to be eaten, to the toad or the frog, right? Now, the grasshopper, even though it's an herbivore, is it a plant itself? No, it's an animal. That means that it has meat, it has flesh, it has those type of things. So this is also a consumer, but it's a secondary consumer. The frog. But what kind of consumer is it? It's a carnivore, right? You guys are not going to see frogs and toads eating strawberries. You're just not. They eat insects, they eat worms, anything that's animal, like that they can actually like chew and swallow, they'll eat that. All right. Now, the frog, if it's unlucky enough to encounter a snake, will pass its energy on to the snake. And the snake itself is also a carnivore. That's its diet. It eats meat. Um, However, this is a tertiary. That's Tertiary consumer. Tertiary just means third, like third in line. Okay. Now, if the snake is not doing a good job hiding, then it'll be unlucky enough to be eaten by the hawk. And the hawk is also a carnivore. But this is an apex predator. Apex predator. That means it has no natural predators. Okay. If you want to know what kind of consumer it is, it's called a quaternary. Quaternary means fourth, think quarter, right? Quarter is a fourth of a dollar. A quart is a fourth of a gallon, right? So quart usually means four. So it's fourth in line. Sorry about all of the messages. Literally, I don't know what's happening. Don't know what's happening right now, but I need not to be disturbed. I don't know what do not disturb is. All right. Are we good? We should be good. Clear. All right. More on food chains. Food chains also show you the relationships between predators and prey. A predator, the organism that is hunting another organism to kill and eat it. And prey, the organism that is being hunted. So these are animals that you guys should already kind of know. Obviously, here, what would be the predator? Predator. You can see it's really in action to try and get. Oh, sorry, prey. Makes sense, right? The predator preys on the prey, all right, and is trying to actually eat it. Now, I do want you guys to notice something. I'm going to try to make a connection for you, right? Evolutionarily speaking, why would this rabbit need to be white based on the environment that it lives in? Why is it an advantage, or why would it have that adaptation to be white, right? So we know that it lives in a very cold area, right, which is why it has fur. But why would the fur need to be white? Why would that be best? Well, it would be able to camouflage much better, right? So if it's able to camouflage better, can predators prey on them as easily? No. So that increases their chances of not being eaten, which increases their chances of surviving, which increases their chances of reproducing, going right back to evolution, right? So these things are not coincidental, right? Just wanted to make that connection for you or synthesize that connection for you. All right, moving on. Food webs. Food webs are a more accurate representation of the interactions between organisms because it shows all of the options organisms have to eat. Right now, organisms might fit into several different trophic levels, and it will show whether the organism is an herbivore, omnivore, or carnivore. Herbivore, which we've already spoken about, eat plants. Carnivores eat meat. Omnivores, this might be a new vocab word, eats both plant and animal matter. The prefix omni means all or everything. All right. Simple, right? Example of herbivores: grass, trees, apples, bananas. Those type of things are. Oh, excuse me. See, that's one of the rare times that I actually messed up. Those are not herbivores. Those are autotrophs. My apologies. Herbivores could include insects such as grasshoppers, um, giraffes, elephants, cows, obviously. Carnivores, lions, tigers, some bears, panda bears are actually herbivores. They only eat bamboo shoots. And then omnivores, us, right? Human beings, right? Sometimes we like to have a steak and have a little side salad, or, a chicken salad or something like that. That's literally linking plant and animal matter together. Water break. All right. We are going to move on. So here's an example of a food web. Let me see if there's another one. No, no, no. All right, so a food web, let me not use this. Right, so a food web we said is a more accurate representation. And you can kind of think of it as like a lot of food chains that are kind of like interwoven, right? Kind of like when a spider, weaves its web. It's very complex, but there's a system to it, right? So there's a system to this as well. Remember, the arrows represent the flow of energy, right? So notice that we have the grass, which is a producer. Does it have any arrows going out? Yes, it has one arrow going out here, out here, out here, out here, which implies what? That implies that these organisms here, they all feed on what? They all feed on grass. Are there any arrows going inside of grass? No, because grass doesn't eat anything, right? Theoretically, the sun would have an arrow going towards the grass to describe like the flow of energy, but the grass is not really eating the sun, right? Nothing really eats the sun, that type of thing, right? So as a result of that, this beaver, is that a beaver? I don't know. All right, let me just do rabbit. This rabbit here is going to be able to survive, right? Because it has its primary food source, which is the grass that's there. But if it's unlucky, it's going to be eaten by either this fox, this owl, this rhinoceros. I don't know, right? It has 3 arrows that are pointing outward. It can transfer its energy to any of those because these 3 organisms all eat that according to this food web, right? Now, if you look over at this organism over here, this frog, is there a primary link between the rabbit and the frog? No, because rabbits don't eat frogs and frogs don't eat rabbits, right? They're unlikely to have that kind of linkage because they don't really kind of need to interact with each other, which is what we're saying here. The frog also has its own food web or food chains, right? So it can either be eaten by the snake or be eaten by the swan or something of that nature. But it also has arrows pointing in. Frogs eat caterpillars, frogs eat worms, and frogs eat beetles. That's the kind of information that we can get out of this. Cool, cool. All right, moving on. Food webs. The only type of organism that is not included in a food chain or food web is a decomposer. Decomposers eat dead matter, returning the nutrients returning the nutrients in it back to the environment to be used by living things. We do not include decomposers in food webs because they eat everything, but only after it is dead. So you won't see a bacteria preying on a cow, right? It'll have to wait until the cow dies in order to obtain its own nutrients, but also to recycle those nutrients back into the soil. All right. Decomposers include worms, bacteria, fungi, certain insects, and more, right? So worms like earthworms, they're very, very good for your garden if you want to start an own garden because they're able to recycle nutrients. Not every organism can do that. So this is why you find worms in soil. They take whatever it is that they need, but then they also help to break it down so that way new plants can grow. That's why we need those nutrients to be recycled after organisms die. That's actually why it's important for organisms to die, so that way Earth can actually continue to live on, if you will. All right. So decomposer, We have a word in decomposer, which is decompose. Oh, whoops. Oh, my pen's not on. I'm like, why isn't this on? All right, decomposers. To decompose means to break down into small substances or pieces. Okay. All right. Energy flow. The reasons organisms consume other organisms is to get the raw materials and energy for growth and development. Each time energy is transferred through trophic levels, some energy is lost. Each time energy is transferred, energy is lost. So to support an ecosystem, there needs to be more producers than primary consumers, more primary consumers than secondary consumers, so on and so forth. But it needs to be more at the bottom than organisms at the top. We have developed an energy pyramid to represent the amount of biomass needed at each trophic level. So biomass, bio means life, right? And mass means the amount of, so the amount of life needed at each level, at each trophic level. And trophic has to do with energy. Okay. All right. This is super important though, guys. This is really, really important, that bullet. Each time energy is transferred through trophic levels, some energy is lost. And it's lost as heat energy, which we'll discuss. All right. So if we look at this energy pyramid, we have producers at 1,000 kilocalories. You don't need to really like kind of know that, but let's say like 1,000 calories. When these grasshoppers or these insects come and eat this grass, they're not going to get all of that energy. 90% is lost as heat. 90%. That's the majority of the food, the energy that it is that we're trying to get, right? So from producers to primary consumers, they get 100 kilocalories. From these grasshoppers, the other side, from these grasshoppers to these anteaters or whatever they are, they only get 10 of those calories, all right? Because 90% lost. And then from these to the owl, they only get 1 calorie. Now, these are just like making up like numbers and stuff like that. But this is specifically the reason why producers are so excellent at being able to survive in any environment, because the sun is everywhere, right? They can literally use harness the sun's energy in order to obtain, you know, the nutrients that it needs to survive. All right. If you just kind of think in terms of humans, like our diets and stuff, the reason why a lot of plant-based diets are very popular is because we're able to eat plants and actually get more energy from just eating strictly plants than we are eating strictly animals. Think about how you feel after a Thanksgiving feast with chicken, turkey, ham, some of you, like roast beef. When we eat those things, we don't feel like, I want to go out and run a marathon. We feel very sluggish. We feel very tired. Those things are very heavy and they don't give us a lot of energy, right? Whereas producers, they contain a lot of energy there. That's why they're at the bottom of the pyramid. And that's why there's a lot more producers than consumers. There's a lot more plants in New York City than there are people. A lot. All right, look around. For every one person, there's probably like 1,000 plants or something. So that's really important, guys. That is 90% is lost as heat. And that's just because of like releasing heat through our pores, like when our body is metabolizing the food that is lost as heat, because obviously the metabolism needs energy in order to harness that energy. It's a lot. That's why we constantly eat food, right? Think of somebody that's like very thin, right? Somebody that's very thin. Um, have you guys ever seen somebody that's like very thin and they eat so much food, but no matter how much food they eat, they continuously like don't gain weight, but they're constantly eating food because their metabolism is so fast. They're constantly burning up that food, right? So they need to eat more in order to satisfy their energy requirements. Makes sense, right? All right, moving on. I don't know why I just switched the camera, but moving on. So energy flow. Energy is usually always supplied to the ecosystems through the sun. That's the primary source of energy. Really important for you guys to know that. Primary source of energy is the sun, which is used by plants to make their own food through photosynthesis. So although energy is constantly lost at each trophic level, it is always being replenished. So the sun is constantly supplying energy into the ecosystem. That's the only reason why we're able to actually live and survive and reproduce when you're 53. All right, so that's it for day 2. Study, 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 study. As always, feel free to ask questions. I will be here. Miss Parsons, Miss Collins, and Miss Ivory will be here to help answer your questions to understand. All right, see you for day 3. Bye.